Battles versus Wars. Late night, day 1. Morton felt his energy begin to come back. How long had he been out? Morton checked the status on his tablet, and he got delegated some CPU cycles, and cache restored back to him. He could operate faster, but wouldn't be able to do as much as he was used to. He walked out of his napping area, and his blanket and pillow dematerialized as fast as they had earlier appeared. He was still tired and sore from not resting in his normal area, but felt remarkably better regardless. The virus was still replicating and feeding in, but now was starting to stack upwards. It seemed to have a hard time pushing towards their little sanctuary, as the path of least resistance was directed up. The virus had completely formed around them, and there was no way out. Morton noticed the chanting had died down. He understood more of the words now. They were chanting for peace, tranquility, and balance. That seemed like something Morton could get behind. Morton walked past all the monks to see out the wall of viruses that had appeared. Maybe an idea would come to him if he got closer to the writhing electronical beasts. As he walked past the barn, he noticed spider webs where there weren't before. He peered inside, and it looked completely thoroughly taken over by spiders. Morton didn't dare walk inside and destroy the intricate webbings they had created. It would offend them, and he definitely didn't want that. Morton walked to the edge of the oasis and up to the virus wall. The viruses swiped at him and slopped goop towards him, but were unable to advance. Morton looked down at the slop and saw a juvenile spider, which was about the size of a basketball, wrap up the slop on a web and drag it offwards towards the barn. Morton thought this was odd behavior for a web crawler, but was careful to not interfere with the spider and went back to focus on the wall. There was no way for Morton to get through them, though. There had to have been hundreds of millions of them by now. They were trying to get to the internal server portal, it looked like. While Morton could see the radio tower before, he could not anymore. The beasts were stacked up too high. Morton took a few steps back and looked on his display. The internal network portal was still intact, but it was unguarded, as Walden's computer was inside the DMZ. Morton didn't have any way of preventing traffic to get out of the network, or to get into the network. He could only contain it in his domain. The antivirus administrator wouldn't have any more luck and would quickly be overran. He would need the help of the task administrator. Then he remembered earlier inside, the task administrator wasn't believing anything he was saying because this wasn't any normal kind of cyber attack. This gave Morton an idea, a very not nice idea. He went to the little play yard where the Karen was napping in the grass and told him the plan. Vanquisher didn't understand this plan at all and seemed indifferent to the overall security of the network. Morton tried to explain that they needed to contain the virus here so nobody else had to deal with it. Vanquisher put the thought in Morton's head that his task was to keep Morton and this oasis safe until further instructions. Morton tried to explain to Vanquisher that lots of other programs would get hurt if they didn't do anything, and that this was in their area of responsibility. Also, that there wouldn't be any further instructions until they cleared up this issue. Vanquisher thought about the scenario, came to a resolution, stretched, stiffened up, and then zipped them up to the virtual sky. Vanquisher kept asking if they were close enough, and Morton kept telling him no. Morton felt Kieran's hesitation and loyalty to this computer and his chanting friends, and reassured him that they wouldn't be escaping through the portal. Vanquisher felt the legitimacy and honor in Morton and kept flying them higher. Higher and higher, straight up they climbed. They climbed so high that they were nearly within reach of the intranet portal when Morton did something that he was definitely not supposed to do per the normal protocol. He had generated a report on his tablet about how his sword and shield were corrupted, and tagged both falsely and erroneously, identified the two components as a virus. In addition, Morton said his system needed to be remotely quarantined until people in the outside world could physically review. He summoned both objects and quickly wrapped them up into one of his quarantine bags and threw them up into the portal. Hopefully none of the slime that might still be on him would get flicked up there from his throwing motion, but he suspected it was only a byproduct of the corrupted code. Hopefully it was benign and not malign. Either way, Morton was careful to not flick anything up into the portal besides quarantine bags. The data went up into the portal, which was addressed to the task manager, which processed for a few seconds and then freaked out. It spasmed like a muscle having something shoved in the wrong way and looked like it was about to reject the data package. Morton tried to get Vanquisher to head back down, but the Kieran was preoccupied with something else. The portal closed and the shockwave blasted Morton away from his Kieran friend. As Morton plummeted towards the earth, Morton flipped butt over tea kettle. As he tumbled down through the digital ether, Morton tried to spot what happened to Vanquisher. Unfortunately, the Kieran seemed to blink out of existence in the flash of light. Morton had a ways to fall, so he had time to think. He didn't know what to do. He didn't have any applets for this sort of situation. He supposed that he would have to take his chances falling. He thought more and wondered as he fell if he would explode into code or what would happen. His shell should be strong enough to survive the impact since he had rested, but who knows? Would the viruses consume him? Would he become a virus himself? All questions worth wondering, Morton thought, as there was nothing in his manual to say what would happen if his program came to a screeching halt at incredible speeds. Then Morton felt something tugging and vibrating in his pocket. Morton flipped and flipped, but the motion didn't adversely affect him at all, so this activity in his pocket was clear to him as everything else. It wasn't literal gravity he was experiencing, but force applied from the closing portal pushing him downwards. It was causing him to have to interpret more input at once, as he seemed to be able to see in all ways at nearly the same time, but he could handle the multitasking, thankfully. Morton reached into his pocket and grabbed the compact. He barely cleared it out of his pocket when it wrapped a powerful lanyard around Morton's hand and sprung into an umbrella. Morton felt a tremendous tug on his arm. His flipping immediately halted as the momentum attempted to continue straining to continue pulling him towards the virtual ground, but was unable to. The red and black umbrella seemed to be able to catch the breeze caused by the moving data, and Morton suddenly understood how to use this function. As the applet interfaced with him through his hand, Morton angled himself and began to control descent back towards the monastery, which he could barely see at this angle over the heaps of viruses packing up around its protective dome. The electronic wind was strong, though, and pushed him into the base, and pulled him into the base, barely dropping him within the protected area safely. He landed, still falling fairly hard, with a thump. Morton's legs buckled, and he went into a roll, tumbling towards the monastery, the compact still in his hand, which retracted the umbrella with an organized snap. Morton smiled at the compact, seeing himself in its mirror, and he got a comforting and warming sensation from it in return. The girl program's face appeared and winked at him. That freaked Morton out, and he clapped it shut and put it back in his pocket. That was probably just automated, he attempted to assure himself of. Morton turned to look to the grassy area and didn't see the Kieran. He listened for the chants, but didn't hear the monks. Morton heard something and turned around to see the invisible wall holding the virus's back about to break, and reflexively put his hands up to guard his face. All he could think about was the poor program he saw in the knowledge base with half of his face gone and an arm. Morton stepped back and tried to get away, but they started falling all around him, having amassed enough to smash through, or maybe it was because they were being fed more of their program again. Morton didn't have enough information to know. Right then, Vanquisher reappeared, and shinier and brighter than ever, and his single branch poking out of his head had a second piece of branching off of it. His red hair seemed to be flowing more like fire, and he was even more radiant than before with his courage and confidence. He trotted up to Morton as if there were no concerns around, and the viruses melted away into dead code, waiting to be rewritten into something else. Vanquisher grabbed Morton, which scared him due to Vanquisher's new power, and they whooshed off. "Where are we going?" Morton asked Vanquisher. A thought appeared in Morton's head from Vanquisher. "We have to go directly to the radio tower to shut it off." Morton responded, "But I don't have the operating capacity to do that," sounding very helpless and distraught at being out of options to help Walden and save the computer. A new thought. "You don't, but I do." The duo dashed to the corrupted radio tower. As they got closer, they saw the source. Morton had been unable to see it before, but a part of the program had completed and had made a camp there. The piles of viruses were forming and piling up to look like giant triangular buildings by some kind of black cat creature in gold armor and a staff. It would bring the code in as it came in and multiply it many times and then send it off. "That thing is destroying our computer," Morton yelled to Vanquisher. Vanquisher said nothing. Morton looked for where the fiery wall was supposed to be, but it was completely corrupted and burning a dark purple color that seemed to absorb the light around it. More viruses were coming in through there as well. Vanquisher landed them both in the giant pit that the evil program had created.